When we do business across different countries, we tend to rely on what feels like common sense. But here's the thing. What happens when the common sense that makes you successful at home causes you to fail spectacularly when you're abroad?
Okay, get this. Back in the 80s, Braniff Airlines had this great idea to promote their new leather seats. The slogan was, "Fly in leather." Simple, right? Sounds luxurious. Well, when they translated that for their Spanish-speaking customers, it came out as "Vuela en cueros," which colloquially means "fly naked." Not exactly the first-class vibe they were going for.
And you've got to ask yourself, how does a massive multi-million-dollar company make a blunder like that? This wasn't some tiny startup. And figuring out the answer to that question is absolutely essential if you want to succeed in today's global economy. That whole fly naked thing is a legendary cautionary tale for sure. But believe me, it is just the tip of the iceberg. These aren't just little translation errors. Nope. They're total failures to understand the culture behind the words. And what's wild is how specific these mess-ups can be. I mean, Kellogg's had to change the name of its brand Bud cereal over in Sweden because the translation came out as Burn Farmer. Or how about the t-shirt company in Miami that wanted to welcome the Pope, El Papa, but a typo meant they were welcoming La Papa, the potato. Look, these are funny stories, but they represent real money and serious damage to a brand's reputation. So why does this keep happening? To really get to the bottom of it, we need a better way to look at the problem. And honestly, the most powerful way is to think of culture as an iceberg. Because the real danger is always what you can't see. And here it is. This is the core idea. 90% of culture is completely invisible. We all get so focused on the things we can see, the language, the food, the way people dress, because it's easy. But that's just the 10% above the water. The massive hidden part below the surface, that's where the unspoken rules and beliefs live. And that's what will sink a business.
So, what even is culture, really? It's the whole shebang, the shared values, beliefs, and rules that a group of people live by. You can almost think of it like the invisible software that's running in the background of a society, programming how everyone interacts with each other.
Up top, above the water, you see the obvious stuff. But the real power, the real driver of behavior, is all happening below the surface. This is where you'll find a culture's core values, its attitude towards things like authority, its unspoken social norms. This is the stuff that can completely derail a negotiation or kill team morale if you're not aware of it.
Okay, so how on earth are we supposed to navigate this giant hidden iceberg? Well, the skill you need is called cross-cultural literacy. And this isn't about memorizing a huge list of do's and don'ts. It's about developing a deep, almost intuitive knowledge that lets you operate effectively and respectfully inside another culture.
All right, let's dive below the surface and look at one of the biggest hidden factors, social structure. This is the fundamental way a society organizes itself, and it has huge implications for how business actually gets done.
For example, how do people move up or down the social ladder? In a caste system, you're pretty much born into a certain social rank, and there's very little chance of moving out of it. Compare that to a class system, where, at least in theory, your own abilities and actions can change your status. This single difference affects everything from who you hire to what motivates your employees.
And this next one, this is a massive one, is the basic unit of society, the individual, or the group. In really individualistic cultures like the US, it's all about personal achievement. But in collectivist cultures, like Japan, the group's harmony and success come first. You absolutely cannot manage a team or market a product without knowing which game you're playing.
Just look at this photo. See the coordination, the shared effort? At this festival in Japan, success isn't about one person being the strongest. It's about the entire group working as one to succeed together. And that exact same mindset translates directly to the workplace, where the team's cohesion is often way more important than any one person's ambition.
So, beyond how a society is built, there's another invisible layer we have to deal with, all the unspoken communication. And let me tell you, this is where things get really subtle, and frankly, pretty dangerous for an outsider who doesn't know the local rules.
Take something as simple as personal space. What feels totally normal to a North American, about 19 inches, can feel pretty distant to someone in Western Europe. And to someone from the Middle East, who might be comfortable standing just a foot away, it can feel downright cold and unfriendly. See the problem? One person feels like their bubble is being invaded, while the other feels like they're being pushed away.
And don't even get me started on hand gestures. You know that V sign for victory or peace? Just turn your palm inward in the UK and you've just insulted someone pretty badly. That classic American thumbs up? Yeah, it's offensive in parts of Italy and Greece. And tapping your temple can either mean you're crazy or you're clever. It just depends on what country you're in.
Okay, so this all seems incredibly complex. I mean, how can anyone possibly navigate all this? Well, the good news is there are tools for this. There are analytical frameworks that can help us make sense of all these hidden differences.
One of the most famous and powerful of these tools is the Hofstede framework. It's basically a cultural decoder ring, developed by a researcher who studied over 100,000 IBM employees across 40 countries. It gives us a language to actually talk about and compare cultural tendencies.
So, the framework asks these key questions to measure a culture. We've already touched on individualism versus collectivism, the whole I versus we thing. But it also looks at stuff like power distance. How much does a society just accept that some people have more power than others? Or what about long-term orientation? Is the focus on future rewards or on what's happening right now?
And when you look at the actual scores, it's just fascinating. Check out the US versus Japan. The US scores a 91 on individualism, one of the highest in the world. Japan is at 46, much more group-oriented. Now flip that. For long-term orientation, the US scores a super low 26, focused on this quarter's results. Japan scores a very high 88, always valuing the long-term plan. Suddenly, their totally different business styles make a whole lot more sense, right?
So here it is, the main takeaway. All this stuff, cross-cultural literacy, it's not some fuzzy, nice-to-have soft skill. In our global world, it is a hard, measurable, strategic advantage. It is literally the difference between flying leather and flying naked.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. In a world that is constantly changing and mixing together, what's the one thing from your own culture, that invisible part below the surface, that you think is absolutely essential to preserve?